think that it would be bad for the Kremlin if there was regime change in Iran. They rely to some extent on Iran for technology, and particularly the drones they use in Ukraine. But actually, by far their biggest ally is China, and they're getting a lot of help from the Chinese and from the North Koreans. That's what matters much more. And the Middle East isn't so much an area of operations for Russia. What they're really doing is munching their way through the northern part of Africa, the Sahel region, in countries like Mali and Niger, where they have a mixture of mercenary operations, dirty tricks, and mineral concessions that appeal very much to the local leaders, and to which the West doesn't really have an answer. So I'm sure they're looking with dismay at the thought of Israel giving Iran a pounding, and also Iran has Russian air defences, which are not proving to be terribly successful.
Now, Edward Lucas joins us now. He is a Times columnist, and he is writing in the paper tomorrow about Russia's ability to hack and how we may be getting sufficiently wise now to do it in the other direction. Edward, a warm welcome to you. Good evening.
Hello, Kate. Good evening.
Just describe what happened to a good friend of yours. Let's just set the scene when it comes to the capability and the tactics used by Russia to hack.
Well, I have a friend called Keir Giles, who is one of the leading Russia experts and Russia critics in this country. And he has just had his emails hacked into and stolen by what appears to be a Russian state actor. What they did was to invite him to an online meeting at the State Department with an email that appeared to be from the State Department, and then sent a rather complicated series of instructions about how he could get access to this online meeting. And he dutifully followed these instructions, not realizing that instead of making it easy for the State Department to pick his brains, he was actually making it easy for the Russians to get into his emails. Now, he's not the first person to be hit by this. We had a similar attack which got the emails of the former MI6 chief, Sir Richard Dialov, and there have been other examples as well. But this was a particularly sophisticated, patient and elaborate ruse to get through his normally very good security.
Yes, it was sophisticated, and it was in depth enough. It was sufficient enough with what he was asked to do to make it plausible, I suppose, and that is the key. You say in your piece that we are getting wise in the other direction.
Yes, I mean, there are quite a few instances now where someone, sometimes it's enterprising journalists or ethical hackers from our side, and sometimes it may be government agencies doing it. But there's been a string of embarrassing leaks from Russia and about Russia. We've had big data dumps about offshore companies, for example, which are much used by the so-called kleptocrats, the people who steal money and use it to keep in power. We've also, and I highlight this in the piece, been able to get some information about how Russian dirty tricks work. One example is the emails from what pretends to be a legal aid outfit in Russia, which helps Russians abroad, and which published a book attacking Lithuania. And someone's managed to get hold of all the emails around that, and they make very entertaining reading. And there's other more sophisticated and important ones as well.
Yeah, and you work through them. So that sort of tells us a tale of Russia, gets us into Russia's minds. What do we then do with that information? It's all very well hacking it, but in your opinion, do we utilise the information we get sufficiently enough? Are we able to, I suppose?
It depends. I think there have been some data breaches which have been extremely useful. Bellingcat, for example, was able to get, in effect, a list of all the fake passports used by Russian intelligence officers when they're travelling abroad, and that's certainly given our spy catchers something to work on. Sometimes I think the reaction is too much sound and fury and not enough thought. And so one of the operations that's just come to light is the so-called doppelganger scheme, which created lots and lots of fake websites which pushed Kremlin narratives. And some of my enthusiastic colleagues spent a lot of time debunking these narratives and sort of explaining why these websites were fake and so on. That may not be the right response because you're actually drawing attention to the issue. And perhaps the goal for Russia is just to have its ideas talked about, and criticising them is still better than ignoring them from a Russia point of view. I think the more important thing is to try and understand what Russia's really doing here. And the point I make in my piece is that the same sort of political mischief-making, fakery, controls that are used inside Russia by the Putin regime to keep itself in power are being used outside Russia to try and destroy our sense of reality and make us sort of apathetic and feel completely confused and nothing's really real, nothing's really private. Because when people feel like that, then it's not easy for them to be attacked in other ways.
Interesting. Okay. Let me just walk across, if I might, as you're with us, as our Russia or as a Russia expert, about the conflict in the Middle East at the moment between Iran and Israel and Russia's role in that. We know Russia has strong ties with Iran. They formalised a strategic partnership, didn't they, at the start of the year? Both countries signed a pact. Is it right to say Russia's getting nervous about Donald Trump's potential involvement in this war? It sort of puts them in a sticky situation, doesn't it?
I think that it would be bad for the Kremlin if there was regime change in Iran. They rely to some extent on Iran for technology, and particularly the drones they use in Ukraine. But actually, by far their biggest ally is China. And they're getting a lot of help from the Chinese and from the North Koreans. That's what matters much more. And the Middle East isn't so much an area of operations for Russia. What they're really doing is munching their way through the northern part of Africa, the Sahel region, in countries like Mali and Niger, where they have a mixture of mercenary operations, dirty tricks, and mineral concessions that appeal very much to the local leaders and to which the West doesn't really have an answer. So I'm sure they're looking with dismay at the thought of Israel giving Iran a pounding, and also Iran has Russian air defences, which are not proving to be terribly successful. So that's bad for business as well. But I think the overwhelming prize for Russia is to try and win in Ukraine.
Yeah, and look, there is a certain irony there to Russia calling for de-escalation, as they did yesterday. The Foreign Affairs spokesperson, Maria Zakharova, has said the world is millimetres away from catastrophe. They've called for things to simmer down. De-escalation, as I've said, and that is ironic from a country that's waging its own war on its neighbour at the moment.
I'm thinking of Captain Renault in Casablanca saying he's shocked to find that gambling's going on here. And Russia thrives on escalation. Russia has won the war so far in Ukraine against the West by threatening us with nuclear weapons to the point that we didn't give Ukraine the help it needed to win. So Russia is the world. If there was an Olympics in how to use threats of escalation, Russia would get a gold medal.
Look, it's really good to speak to you, Edward. It's a very in-depth, fascinating piece. You go into lots of detail about how we can target Russia and how Russia has been targeted in terms of disinformation. And it's a really interesting piece. You can find it in The Times tomorrow. You've had a sneak preview this evening from Edward Lucas, The Times columnist and Russia expert. Edward, great to speak to you. Thank you.
Anytime, Kate. Thanks so much.
Cheers. Edward Lucas there.